Hey everybody, welcome to Not Another Tooling Podcast with myself, Austin Pearson, and my co-host, Mr. Matt Malcolm. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good today. It's a bit wet and miserable outside, but the man on a weekday normally does it. Although, last night I took my boys on a bike ride to Cannock Chase, and it just rained. And they were doing so well, soaked. But yeah, so we got out in the rain, but it was a long trip.
For those of you who don't know it, Cannock Chase is a pretty challenging mountain bike trail, for sure. And how old are your kids, Matt?
Those two was 8 and 11. So we had a few falls. We had some brake failures as well. The brake just stopped working and just like colliding. But to be fair, they just sucked it up. We got back, hot shower, cup of hot chocolate. They were sound. Although my 8-year-old this morning, he says, hands aren't working. He's coming down like this. He can't work his hands. It's a bit of tension and stuff from holding on so much. Very cool.
Brilliant. Very cool. Yeah, I'm feeling the cold a bit this week because I was in Austria last week and it was 33 degrees most days. So it feels a bit cold here, but kind of nice in some ways. So good. Right. So welcome to episode 1 of a mini series we're doing around core ITIL processes and how tooling can help and impacts those ITIL processes. So today we are starting off with everybody's favorite process, which is the incident management process, which is obviously the one that everybody gets involved with on a very, very regular basis, right? You have incidents every single day, and without the correct tooling, you'll have a nightmare. And I'm sure that, Matt, you've got plenty of stories of this, of war rooms with people. In fact, I had a client once who said they had 300 people attending a war room, or over 300 people, because at the time that was the Microsoft Teams limit, and they broke Microsoft Teams. They had over 300 people attending a war room because they didn't have the right tools, right?
It can't be productive. It can't be.
It wasn't. It was a bank, and they were really not having a good time of it at the time, right? But typically, in an incident management process, we are looking to answer a few, probably 3 key questions, right? I think the first is, what is the affected CI? And the reason that's important is so that we can get that incident to the right resolver group to be able to fix that incident as soon as possible. The second is, what service or services are affected by the problem that you're having, which is so that you can put the right priority on it. If you're a bank and none of your banking customers can access their funds, then it's going to be really high priority. If you are a bank and it's something on your SharePoint portal for some DevOps guys where they keep some documentation that they don't really use that often, then P4 doesn't need to be fixed straight away, sort of thing. So what's the CI that's affected? What's the priority of this incident? And then the third one is, what information do we need for that, for the right engineers to be able to fix that incident as quickly as possible? Those are kind of the 3 key questions I think we're trying to answer in incident management. Have I missed anything, do you think, Matt?
No, but I've been having conversations lately and I've been thinking of better ways to explain things. So like I 4 things into 3 buckets, and I'm looking at capabilities now. And it's, first bucket is C, the second bucket is manage, and then the third bucket is act. So yeah. So I think these are the more easy spaces to have the conversation. All the bits you discussed there are more in the C, like what's happening, define it, where is it going. But like trying to cover those in one big piece, I think you've addressed the C. It's like, where do we see it though? Probably that's a topic of conversation, because you'd have scenarios where organizations might not have a mature service management position. So they might have to rely on the source of where this information is coming from. Where is that critical thing being monitored or not being monitored? So the understanding the C of like what this thing is, where could you see it across your existing tool chain? Where are you going to know there's a problem?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, see, manage, act is, I think I've probably come across several variations of that, but it's a good, yeah, it's definitely a good way of looking at it, right? And the reason these things are important is because it's hard being on an incident team, being a level 1, level 2, and level 3 responder to incidents. One thing that I have seen time and time again is that we focus a lot on the process of getting of resolving an incident, but providing these people with the right data so that they can do their job effectively makes a huge difference. Otherwise, it's a very demoralizing job, and the turnover of staff is high, but also it's a very expensive process as well, because if you're asking engineers from level 1 up to answer those questions that we've just been through, then it can take them a long time to go and do that, and that leads to a long MTTR. It leads to the cost of that of fixing that internally being expensive, but the cost potentially externally to your clients is potentially huge. And I know there's been some big outages over the years, and we can all think of some and customers just go, do you know what, I don't want to deal with your brand anymore, because I don't trust you anymore, and I don't get the level of service I want. So answering those questions and allowing people to see what is going on, and so that they can take action effectively is really important. So I think let's look at the first one, which is understanding which CI is causing the problem, because this leads us nicely into lots of tool discussions, right?
Yeah, but that's always a hiccup, isn't it? I know we're going to have another episode of this mini series talking about the asset or the CI side of things.
Yeah.
But that in itself is an intrinsic step to understand what's happening in the instance space, what is happening, where is it, and a lot of organisations still now. I mean, I know I'm saying it really; it's just a common thing. The notion of the CNDB is generally an afterthought or a later or a more complex or whatever else. But ultimately, pushing that further on down the line impacts that first process, because you don't know what's happening to begin with. Yeah, there's some stuff you can put in place to make that a bit easier, but it's going to be so much easier if you understand the thing. Sometimes you don't even know where this thing came from that's causing the issue, but understand the context of how this thing relates to the rest of the estate. So you need to instrument some activity, we'll call it that for now until the next episode, but some activity to understand what you've got and where it is.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And that could be fairly simple. It could be fairly complex, right? I think it's much harder these days than it's ever been, right? Because when you start to look at things like containers that are being spun up and spun down, I was with a gaming company, and they were talking about spinning up an AWS instance for 2 minutes to show an advert for the in between the football, and then spinning it down again. And when you've got an environment like that that's like up down all the time, then the old ways of doing that are pretty tough. But anyway, we digress, and we'll cover more of that off in the config session for sure. So understanding what CI is not just about your config management and having an up-to-date CMDB. It's also about being able to see what CIs are related to each other, and then being able to pick out the right one that is causing the problem. So if you've got, I was with a head of infrastructure recently, and he said, I just want to go back to the old days where out of my very large number of VMs, when something goes wrong, somebody can just say, it's that one.
Yeah.
Just that's all I want. And he was just looking at VMs and, you know, server infrastructure. When you add in the network and the storage and the applications and all microservices, all this sort of stuff, then, you know, this is another layer of complexity that can be solved, I think, in two ways. One is simplifying your tool chain as much as possible so that you've only got 2 or 3 places to look. The other is by putting some layer over the top of correlation to bring these things together, both of which are very valid. Although you need to check that your data sources are good if you're going to be putting them into an abstraction layer, and applying some AI and ML to it. I think.
But let's just pause on that section there, because this is I know we don't want to like overly use buzzwords and stuff like that, but we're really talking about, you know, filling the bucket. We're talking about observability there, really, aren't we? That's the step we're talking about for customers to get to, is the what have you got, where is it, and make some sort of clear view of it. And that could be, you know, simplifying your estates. It could be putting it all into a presentation layer. But that step there is massive leaps and bounds in order to achieve higher efficiency in incident management. So although it's a buzzwordy thing, ultimately we know what the background of it is and the history of it is. We've talked about this before, but introducing that layer in there, that is going to have a direct impact on your incident management processes. Just introducing that layer, however you achieve it.
Completely right. And that actually feeds really nicely into the other piece, which is what priority you put in this, because once you bring these things together and you can observe not just at a technical layer, but then at a business layer, and start to say, okay, right, it's not just these VMs that we've got a problem with. These VMs are part of our service that gets car parts out of the factory on time, and if we don't ship them on time, then people's cars are going to be delayed and we're going to have to pay them back some money and things like that, you know. And then, you know, that's more important than this person calling me about this. So trying to bring not just the technical piece, which is in like those standard 3 areas, right, of logs, traces, metrics, you know, bring those together so you've got a technical view, but then how does this apply to our business? So we know where to put the right priority.
Just a very quick one on that one. Logs, traces, and metrics. A phrase I just started to use the last few months, melt. So the E missing in that initial acronym was events. I think that's probably a more accurate picture, because you are going to have the right stuff in your estate that is going to create events, however they form. Could be an email, but introducing those into the full picture just adds another layer of understanding.
You're absolutely spot on. Let's talk about the last question, and then we'll come back to something in a minute. But so the last question is, you know, once you've decided what priority it is and what CI it is, so you've got that to the right resolver group, what they need to know is what information do I need to be able to fix this problem? And we're getting to a stage now where actually, you know, some of that is automated, right? It could be really simple. Windows service restart. It's not even a person making that decision. It's a machine. And this is where you talked about see, manage, act. The act piece comes in of, you know, when you look at your incidents, how much time do people spend trying to go back in time and say, okay, well, what happened an hour ago, 2 hours ago, whatever, that means that that I need to go and resolve something. What is that information? And we're talking about triage data here, typically. Gathering that. And the more, obviously, the more time people spend doing that, the more expensive it is, and the longer your MTTR is. So being able to gather that as at the time of the event, makes a huge difference, and present it to that person so that ideally, they're not even looking at these tools. They're looking at ServiceNow, for example, or any other ITSM tool. And they are getting an incident and going, right, I've got an incident I need to deal with. It's come straight to me as the networking guy, for example, in the right resolver group, because we understand what CI is. Oh, and hang on a minute, it's already been pinged. I've got a trace route. I've run the OSPF queries. Great. Now I can solve that in 5 minutes.
That's the key. It's that maturing space. The seeing side and observability. That's like, you just need that position. You're not going to go anywhere. The bit we're talking about now is a mixture between that, like, understanding and managing activity through to like acting on it. But it's having that information across. So understanding, here's what I've got, here's what I can do and should do, whether that's automated or orchestrated or not. And then if it does try those, giving that feedback to the user is going to resolve it, because I'm not gone are the days, but the scenario of having something and having to do the triage manually, I think that's generally going to slip over time, because the technologies are both the middle section to manage it and then do the automation, sometimes one of the same. They're doing many of those activities, so you can spend less time doing the triage, which ultimately is going to reduce your overall MTTR. But this is where our tool stack is maturing over time. You don't need it. You can still do many steps of it in a mature place before getting to that stage. But the Nirvana position is stuff has just been dealt with. And if it can't be dealt with, you understand why it can't be dealt with, what's been tried. So you make sure your level 2, 3 engineer, whoever it might be, developer, focuses on the initial thing, the main thing, rather than all of those basic triage steps that have already been done through the tool chain that you've already got.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You've got a Windows server problem, and the system has already restarted the service and that hasn't fixed it, but you've got the triage information that says these are the top 10 busiest running processes at the time, etc. So somebody can then go, right, that's already happened. Here's the info that was happening here's what happened on that server at the time of the event. Great. I know what to do. Yeah, I agree. And something I wanted to go back to was that in this space, where do you start tightening up on your incident management process? We're going to refer to a previous episode where before you dive into observability or AI ops or whatever it is that Gartner or Forrester or whoever is telling you to go and look at, go through your incident data to see where you are spending the time and the money first. Because this is an area where typically, let's say you've had a recent outage that was painful for the company, and everybody's like, right, we need to go fix this. Yes, you may well need to fix that. However, once you dive into the details, you might find, like, particularly, I always find P3s. Like, nobody cares about P3s. It's P3s. It's not many people affected. However, because it's not a high priority, those are the times where people spend a lot of time looking back and saying, okay, well, there's 4 hours since this thing went wrong. I've got to go and try and find out what happened 4 hours ago. That takes a lot of time and effort. And there's a lot more P3s than there are P1s, P2s, right? So you can spend so much money on people in that P3 space that when you're trying to fix this stuff, actually, there's so much value in looking there, not just at P1s and P2s, which are obviously hugely valuable as well. Right, so understanding that first and making sure that you're aligned with, what are you trying to do as a business? If you are trying to take cost out of what you're doing as a business, look at that incident dump and see where you're spending time, and then have a look at how some of these tools can support you not spending that time, so that when people leave, you don't have to hire new people at 30% extra cost. Or maybe you're looking to improve revenue, in which case you need your customers to be as satisfied as possible and get the best experience as possible. So you want to be focused on driving that MTTR down, or being proactive, or getting high levels of automation in, so that you can drive a better experience for your end customer.
Yeah, agree.
So, right, we've talked about a lot. Is there any particular area I've missed?
To keep the mini-series mini, I think we're probably good to box off.
Right. Okay, wonderful. So to summarize then, we were talking about the incident management process and where tooling can help. We talked about 3 key questions which need to be answered. Which CI is affected? What priority should we put on that, on this particular incident? And what information will an engineer need to be able to fix that issue? Which you can look at as a C Manage Act piece as well, which we'll come back to in another series, I think. So looking at your tools, either try and get as little tools as possible, or put a layer of observability over your tools, so that you can get an idea straight away of which CI, which we're going to cover off more in our config mini series, what business services affected, and then trying to use some automation to grab information and give to an engineer from the time of the event, so that you can reduce your MTTR and the cost associated from an operational perspective, but also from an outage perspective. And always start by looking at your incident data first to see where your real problems are, not where perceived problems are, so you can look at improving your incident management and the tools around that with hard data. Thank you very much for watching this. Everybody, we will be covering off problem change and config in forthcoming episodes. If you've got any thoughts about this or anything you would like to add, then please get in touch with us. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Bye.